High Court Judge Portia Phahlane, and 2 of her 3 co-accused have been granted bail. The 4th accused, who is the leader of the International Pentecostal Holiness Church, was not granted bail. All 4 were arrested last night on charges of alleged corruption and money laundering. Newsroom Africa's Linda Mnisi attended court proceedings and now joins us live. Linda, a very good afternoon to you. Quite an eventful evening and morning with those arrests and appearances in court. Maybe just take us through what happened in court and some of the reactions, particularly from Judge Phahlane.
Well, it has been quite an interesting day, Katleho, looking at the appearance of Judge Portia Phahlane. From this morning when the news broke, there really has been great anticipation, even in outside court, really, with scores of supporters of the IPHC waiting for that court appearance to eventually happen. But in fact, it eventually happened, and they appeared in the dark. And you go through the charge sheet, they're facing 19 counts of corruption collectively. And you go through the charge sheet, which basically details the history of the church and gives a summary, really, of the succession battle and how this matter got to be here. You'd recall that Mike Sandlana is one of the contenders, right, or the leaders of, one would say, a faction within the church. And that resulted in a number of civil cases that, arose from that particular succession battle. 2, in fact, of those litigation cases came out of it, and they were ultimately merged to be made one. In 2023, Judge Phahlane, who was to case manage, basically deal with the pre-trial issues of the case, ultimately became the presiding officer in this particular matter. But according to the state, she then received in excess of 2 million rands in gratification in exchange for a favorable judgment to Sandlana, and that's what brought them in court. Investigations, extensive investigations that the Hawks say they entered into, led them to the arrest of the suspects. It's a case, Katleho, of a presiding officer swinging from the bench to the dock. And one might argue it's the first time that a sitting judge is facing criminal charges for alleged wrongdoing in a matter that they are adjudicating. But today she came to court making a bail application along with her co-accused. And one of the things that she says is that this is a personal vendetta against her brought by some of the litigants in that succession battle who, of course, were not happy with her. She says, there's been a number of attempts on her, or allegations made against her of corruption, even a recusal application, which she refused. If after she refused that particular recusal application, there were a number of threats on her life, which she ultimately reported to the police. In her affidavit, she gives those particular case numbers to the reported cases that she made. But she believes that at the heart of this is that litigation matter and some of the parties that were involved. But of course, ultimately the state did not oppose her bail, alongside with her son Kagiso and the spokesperson of the church, Vusi Ndala. She was granted 50,000 rands bail, while her son and the spokesperson were granted 10,000 rands bail. A number of bail conditions, as you would know, that when one is granted bail, a number of conditions are then put in place, and those include not to interfere with investigations, not to interfere with the witnesses, but also for Judge Phahlane, she's barred from entering the 2, high court buildings in Pretoria. As you would know, usually when we go to court, we're usually standing on the one side of the court building in Pretoria, but there's also the other side, which is called the Palace, which is now barred from entering. And the reason behind this is because they're saying that investigations are still ongoing. So this is a condition that the state asked for and was granted. When it comes to the leader of the one faction, Mike Sandlana, he could not proceed with bail because the state said there were a number of issues that still needed to be investigated. One, the issue relating to a pending criminal trial. Another one relates to an alleged assault that took place when he was arrested. In that assault, they're saying that some officers who were participating in the takedown got injured and had to be hospitalized. A firearm was taken and ultimately returned. Another issue relates to the address or the verification of the address. And his lawyers are basically saying the state is being selective in how they're choosing to deal with him in particular. They forget to mention that he's been diligent in attending the other criminal trial and that they could go and verify the address because he no longer lives in the other address. In fact, he's been forthcoming. He brought himself to the police and even gave them an address which they could go and verify in the early hours of the morning when he was arrested, trying, of course, in what would be a failed attempt to push ahead and forge ahead to fight for his freedom. But that application wouldn't succeed. The magistrate ruling that the state would need time to go and deal with those issues before it can come to court, because the intention of the state is to oppose bail in relation to Mike Sandlana. But of course, we had an opportunity to speak to the Hawks in relation to what exactly happened during the arrest of Mike Sandlana and the alleged assault. Take a listen.
That I consider the charges against me as the result of a personal vendetta conducted against me by parties who were involved in a civil dispute with each other relating to the succession battle within a church group called the International Pentecost Holiness Church, the IPHC, after the death of the then leader of the church, one Bishop Leighton Modise.
We believe that the extreme seriousness of these allegations require that the Judicial Service Commission immediately convene and take the extraordinary step of immediately suspending the judge pending a formal investigation by a Judicial Conduct Tribunal. We believe that in order to safeguard the integrity and reputation of the judiciary, the JSC does require to act in terms of Section 19(1)(b) of the JSC Act, that they suspend the judge. Even though the Constitution does guarantee the judge the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, but the extreme seriousness of these allegations means that the JSC cannot sit idly, it must act.
All right, so the first bite that you heard there, Katlego, is the lawyer of Judge Phahlane really reading her affidavit, which details what she says is a personal vendetta against her. But of course, after that, you would have seen Judges Matters, Mbegazeli Benjamin, essentially reacting to the arrest of Judge Phahlane, and at this particular point calling for her suspension. This is the reaction that some of those in the legal fraternity, particularly those watching the works of or the work of the judges, which is so important, in administering justice, is concerned. So they're looking at it and saying, in order to protect the integrity of the judiciary, she must be suspended immediately. But of course, touching on other important factors, which include the JSC Act, you would know that a judicial conduct committee would be, put together to investigate a complaint if it is filed, in order, of course, to ultimately determine whether or not a tribunal would need to be set up to investigate a complaint. But they see this as an extraordinary measure, which, of course, they believe the JSC Act also makes provision of, because in this particular case, it's not a case of a complaint that has been, laid at the JSC against the judge. It's a criminal charge, which of course they view in serious light and believe that this calls for extraordinary measures and that the judge should be suspended, of course, pending this particular matter to, of course, keep and preserve the integrity of the judiciary.